December 26, 1900. It's Boxing Day, and a small ship called the Hesperus is cutting through the gray, churning water toward a cluster of rocks 20 miles off the coast of Scotland. The crew has been delayed for days by bad weather. You know, the kind of weather that makes the North Atlantic feel personal.
Yeah, and it's angry at you specifically.
Exactly. And Captain James Harvey sounds the horn as they approach the lighthouse. No response. He fires a flare into the sky. Nothing. The lighthouse sits there on its rocky perch, completely silent, completely dark.
And that's wrong. Lighthouses aren't supposed to be dark. That's literally their one job. It only has one job.
Relief keeper Joseph Moore climbs into the small boat and rows to shore. He climbs 160 steep, slippery steps cut into the cliff face, the wind screaming around him, spray hitting him sideways. He opens the door to the lighthouse and finds nothing. The clock on the wall has stopped. The lamp is prepped but unlit, and 2 of 3 oilskin coats are missing from their hooks.
3 lighthouse keepers were stationed on that rock: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. They're experienced men. They're professional men. These are the kind of men that pissed salt water and sweated crab. These are the kind of men that looked as manly as you can look in long johns. These are the kind of men that danced with the devil and slept with mermaids. And these men were never seen again.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
Welcome to Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Gabriel.
And I'm Kathryn. And tonight, we're going somewhere remote. Somewhere that feels haunted isn't quite the right word.
Cursed, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe just forgotten by the rest of the world in a way that lets strange things happen. This is the story of the Flannan Isles.
Before we get into what happened, we need to talk about where this happened, because the Flannan Isles are not normal. They're not like the other moms. Mm-hmm.
They're also called the Seven Hunters.
Which, okay, already we're into the names that belong into folklore and wives' tales, because there's like Cancun, for example, and then there's 7 hunters, and one screams mojitos and the other screams tomahawks and scalps.
Totally.
That's a name that says, something's out here looking for you. Why have you traveled to these lands and disturbed our slumber?
And these are 7 tiny rocky islands about 20 miles west of the Isle of Lewis and Scotland's Outer Hebrides. The biggest one, Island Moor, which just means big island in Gaelic, is only about 39 acres. Cliffs that drop 200 feet into the Atlantic, constantly battered by wind and waves, and for centuries, people actively avoided these islands. I would.
Well, it's not like, oh, that place, not a huge fan. This is like actively avoid like the DMV, like avoiding scurvy.
Did you just compare the DMV and scurvy?
Very similar.
I mean, I think people that drive the DMV might agree.
What's that meme I hate? If you know, you know.
If you know, you know, and you do know.
God,
well, you don't know about scurvy.
I
hope.
No, not yet. No, I have.
Not yet.
Well, I mean, we could be stuck on a desert island. We don't know.
Oh my God. Shepherds would bring sheep over to graze, but they would never stay overnight. Like, never. They called it the other country. They believed it was touched by something paranormal, like the veil between the worlds was just thinner there.
Now, these islands are named after Saint Flannan, a 7th century Irish bishop who, I guess, supposedly built a small chapel there. And there were all these rituals people did when they visited. So you had to remove your hat when you reached the plateau. You had to turn sunwise, clockwise 3 times. You had to bring the blood of a firstborn lamb and do a small Scottish jig, which is only one I just made up.
Can I just be honest about something?
Yes.
If you had to turn sunwise, clockwise 3 times, how many people got that wrong? Because I'm sorry, anytime somebody says you go counterclockwise, for a split second, I have to go, okay, left. I got to turn left. Like, I would just jack that up if I was nervous.
I think this is a you problem.
Oh.
We're going to go to an elementary school and ask them these same questions. And we'd be like, hey, are you like this? No, I can't tell your age, woman. Can you go left or can you go right? Do you know what clockwise is? And they'll be like, yeah, of course. We just learned that in Miss Chappelle's class.
Miss Chappelle's? Wow, okay. Well, breaking these rules was considered extremely dangerous, and the locals believed in something called the Phantom of the Seven Hunters.
Which sounds like a video game.
Totally, a supernatural video game, because they thought this island was being guarded and that the islands didn't appreciate outsiders. And some accounts describe it as a spirit. Others as something a little more physical, like, a giant hairy spider. Either way, it was known to carry people off.
And naturally, the British government looked at this deeply cursed chunk of rock and said, you know what this needs? A lighthouse, for we have places to spread our imperial charms.
Every podcast, we have a British accent, even when it was Norwegian.
We do a lot of British stuff.
No, you were doing a Norwegian voice.
It's my intrigue. It's my intrigue.
Okay.
I'm just jealous. I'm just jealous of the accent. That's what it is. I have nothing. There's no flair to my accent. It's just there. It's just words.
Well, to be fair, ships were wrecking on these rocks constantly. The lighthouse was genuinely needed. It was completed in 1899 and designed by David Allen Stevenson, who was actually a cousin of Robert Louis Stevenson, the Treasure Island guy. The whole family were lighthouse engineers.
Which is actually really interesting. And I hope everyone's learned a cool fact today that the guy who helped design that cool Las Vegas hotel was actually British.
For generations, they were all engineers. Robert Louis was supposed to go into the family business, but went into writing instead. The lighthouse was first lit on December 7th, 1899, almost exactly 1 year before everything went wrong.
And before everything went wrong, I want you to imagine you are a lighthouse guy, just tough and rumble. You got stubble that could skin a cat. What was it actually like to work there? What did you do? Because I think people have this romantic idea of lighthouse keeping. I maybe don't, but I do think of a solitary figure standing against the storm. It's very poetic. It's very filmic. It's very George Clooney-esque.
Okay, but the reality was more Kevin Bacon. Okay? Keepers worked in rotation. 3 men on the island at all times, with a 4th rotating on shore leave. Shifts were typically 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, but weather could extend that dramatically. You could be stuck out there for months. You just really never knew.
And the work itself was relentless. It's all encompassing. It was like your first high school relationship. You keep the lamp burning from dusk to dawn every single night, no exceptions. You fall asleep while talking on the phone. You're constantly tending the wick. You're cleaning the lens. You're monitoring fuel levels. There's anniversary cards or school dances. It's a lot.
Okay, wow. So the lighthouse, which is what we are talking about, in case you forgot, these lenses they use, these like massive Fresnel lenses, rotated on a bath of liquid mercury to reduce friction. Mercury.
Healthy.
Yeah, it's incredibly toxic, guys. Keepers had to strain and clean it regularly. They breathed in those fumes. They touched it with their bare hands. There was actually a phrase, mad as a lighthouse keeper, like mad as a hatter, both professions with documented mercury exposure. They were like the dentists of their day.
I had no idea that that's where Mad as a Hatter came from. Oh my God. I learned so much from this podcast. Now, so, you know what? Symptoms for mercury exposure. It looks like this. So irritability, tremors, memory loss, personality changes, depression, hallucinations. It's actually amazing that the effects of this long-term mercury exposure and having young children are so very similar.
Okay, but wait. Speaking of mercury and young children, do you not remember those like mercury thermometers?
Yeah.
How are we alive? Is that what's wrong with our generation?
Well, we're not that old. I feel like previous generation.
No, dude, I think...
Let's just say all this stuff explains why boomers are the way they are right now.
Okay, then maybe that's what's wrong with me, because I'm quite confident that my babysitter, aka like my second mom, used a mercury thermometer.
Do they stick those up? Or was that just under the tongue? I don't know.
Listen, I'm not going to get too deep into that.
I didn't know. I didn't know if that's what made you so weird.
I don't know, but I'm having flashbacks and I'm wondering,
Kathryn.
That's what's wrong with me today? Who knew?
Could be. So, yeah, but you weren't stuck on a haunted rock in the middle of the Atlantic, slowly being poisoned by your workplace, watching the same three faces day after day, listening to the wind, gruffy men, and real and imagined sirens screaming at you, and you're just supposed to be fine, good, well.
Well, there are documented cases of keepers having complete breakdowns, like violent outbursts, suicide. One keeper's wife in 1923 threw herself onto the rocks below the North Head Lighthouse like she was in an old English Gothic. Newspapers attribute it to the desperate life of isolation and the incessant howling of the winds, which certainly is true given the newspaper's historic desire to embellish like nothing.
Now, this is giving me very much the movie The Lighthouse vibes.
Oh my.
You remember? I made you watch? You only watched like 15 minutes of it?
Yeah.
You remember that?
And I remember which 15 minutes.
You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
That would be the part I remember.
Let me just say that one phrase. That one meme that actually infuriates me, right?
Uh-huh.
Again, if you know about me, lobster.
Oh my God. If you haven't seen the movie, I can't say you should, and I can't say you shouldn't. I mean, I can kind of say you shouldn't, but we should talk about it. Eggers has explicitly said that Flannan Isles' disappearance was one of his inspirations, along with another tragedy that directly shaped his case, the Smalls Lighthouse incident.
Now, content warning here. This story involves death, prolonged isolation, and a waving corpse.
That's disgusting. 1801, the Smalls Lighthouse off the coast of Wales. Two keepers are stationed there, Thomas Howell and Thomas Griffith.
Both named Thomas, as you can see, which feels significant somehow, though I can't say why. I just think I find it even more infuriating if my mortal enemy also had the same name.
And what's definitely significant is that they hated each other, like publicly, like people knew. They argued in public houses, nearly resulting in old-timey fisticuffs, the boxing stance.
Oh, I love that boxing stance. Bring it back.
And someone looked at these two men who couldn't stand each other and said, let's lock them in a tiny hut in the middle of the ocean together because that will go well. This was every Britney Spears marriage. It wasn't ending well.
Free Britney.
Leave Britney alone.
The small lighthouse at that time wasn't like lighthouses you picture now. It was this rickety wooden hut perched on 9 oak pillars. It was swaying in the wind while waves crashed through the legs beneath. It was, I guess, kind of like an elementary school class trying to jump you.
And shortly after they arrived, Thomas Griffith got sick or had an accident. The records are unclear. Either way, he died. And now Thomas Howell has a massive problem. Not for sure any grief for the deceased, though.
Because everyone knows he and the Griffith were enemies. Mm-hmm. Lighthouse group of Thomas and Thomas and Thomas and Thomas did not see eye to eye.
Well, if he throws the body into the sea, which is the practical thing to do, he'll definitely be accused of murder. So he keeps the body and the hut with him like a throw rug.
No, it doesn't scream feng shui to me.
Ugh. Because now the body's starting to decompose and Howell cannot stand it anymore. So he builds a coffin out of the pieces of the hut itself. He was a cooper, a barrel maker, and he puts Griffith's body in it and lashes it into the railing outside, which, by the way, he probably should have just started with the coffin to begin with.
Okay, well, he lashed it to the railing outside, which seems like something that a barrel maker would do, though I don't know what barrel makers do other than make barrels. But now he's looking at this dead enemy through the window every day like a heavy wind chime, and it's just gets worse, doesn't it?
Yeah, because then the storms came and the coffin started to break apart. Griffith's arm fell loose, and every time the wind blew, The arm would catch the air and move like it was beckoning, waving at him through the window, asking him to come outside to play.
I hate and love this so much. This is like every Weekend at Bernie's movies.
Well, this happened for weeks, like possibly months. Thomas Howe kept that lighthouse lit. He did his job while watching the dead Thomas wave at him through the glass. Ships passed and saw figures standing on top of the lighthouse, but he never responded to their shouts. The light was burning, so help never came.
And when they finally did rescue him, his friends say they did not recognize him. His hair had turned white. It's also why people can't recognize me today. He was completely broken by this experience. This was like his 2006 Chargers.
Oh,
don't just move on.
I can't. You were so broken. It's so sad.
Continue on.
Okay,
with the story
all
for
right.
everybody.
Well, this is why the rules changed. After Smalls, British lighthouse policy required a minimum of 3 keepers at all times, never 2. If one died, there would always be a witness, someone to corroborate, someone to help you stay sane. Kind of seems like a common sense rule that wasn't in place due to big lighthouse trying to save on wages.
Except that Flannan Isles, the rules of 3 didn't help. Extra wages be damned.
Because all 3 vanished together.
Let's talk about who these men actually were, because they became almost mythological when these retellings started. But of course, they were real people. They had families, sadly.
Okay, so James Ducat was the principal keeper, 44 years old with the Northern Lighthouse Board since 1878. Over 20 years of service. His wife, Mary, was waiting for him back on Lewis. They had 4 children. Louisa was 16, Robert was 13, Annabella was 9, and Arthur was just 6. Now Thomas Marshall was 28, and he was the second assistant and was unmarried. He'd only been with the service for a few years. He was the one who kept the official logs, the one whose handwriting we'd later analyze for clues.
And then lastly, there was the hothead, allegedly. His name was Donald MacArthur.
And MacArthur is pretty interesting. He was an occasional keeper, basically a substitute, filling in for William Ross, who was on sick leave. He had a reputation. A lot of sources describe him as volatile, known for fighting and being quick-tempered.
Which makes certain details about the log entries even more confusing if they're real, because they may not be real. But they did have a real sense for the dramatic. Some were even a little bit poetic.
But here's the thing, we do need to address this because the log entries have become central to the mythology. For decades, there's been this story that Thomas Marshall wrote increasingly disturbing entries in the days before they vanish. That he described storms as so severe that Ducat went very quiet, and MacArthur, this tough, brawling sailor, was weeping and praying.
And you always know that when the tough guy is weeping and praying, that something has gone very terribly wrong.
For sure.
So the final entry supposedly read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all," which is eerie right before they disappeared and, again, also strangely poetic.
Yeah, but here's the problem. There's no evidence these entries ever existed. A Fortean Times journalist named Mike Dash did extensive research and found that the dramatic log entries appear to have been invented years after the disappearance. The official reports don't mention them. Muirhead, who investigated, never referenced it.
So someone just made them up. Maybe.
Well, the story did get embellished over time, particularly after Wilfred Wilson Gibson wrote the poem Flannan Isle in 1912, which includes details like an overturned chair and an uneaten meal that also aren't in the official records. Well, we actually know the last log entry was December 13th. There were slate notes from the morning of December 15th, and the men likely disappeared that afternoon.
So let's walk through what Joseph Moore actually found. He later said he felt this overwhelming dread as he climbed those steps, like something was wrong before he even opened the door. This is like that dread that Sunday night right before you have school the next day.
Or work. But what was it, though? Like, what was it? Intuition or the vibes of a haunted island? The door was closed but not locked. Inside, the lighthouse was orderly. No signs of struggle. No blood, no violence. The clock had stopped, The lamp was prepped to be lit, meaning the men had completed their morning work on the 15th.
So they vanished sometime after that. It's like they followed the white rabbit and they were late for a very important date.
Wow.
With death.
Wow.
Yeah. Very poetic. I'm very poetic.
In the entrance hall, one oilskin coat remained on its hook, MacArthur's coat, which means one of the three went outside in the middle of December in the North Atlantic without his waterproof gear.
And of course, that's insane. You don't do that, not out there, unless you were in this brash hurry, unless something made you run outside without thinking. Because now you're running on fear because it's most likely not just laziness.
And Robert Muirhead, the superintendent who knew all three men personally, arrived December 29th to start investigating. Everything on the east side of the island was fine, but the west landing, the exposed side facing the open Atlantic, showed severe damage.
And how severe is obviously a very important detail.
Absolutely. The iron railings were bent. The railway track for hauling supplies wrenched out of its concrete. Turf ripped away from the cliff edge. And here's the detail that stops me cold. A heavy wooden storage crate kept in a crevice 110 feet above sea level had been destroyed. Its contents were literally scattered across the rocks.
Which, dear God, seriously, why are you showing off 110 feet above sea level? I mean, good on you.
For perspective, that's as high as an 11-story building. The waves had reached that high.
Okay, now tell us how that's even possible. What do the smart people say, Kathryn?
Rogue waves was one of the prevailing theories and one of those most terrifying acts of God imaginable.
Which sounds very correct. Rogue waves were basically sailor myths for a very long time. Stories of walls of water appearing out of nowhere, 80, 90, 100, 115 feet high, that could swallow up ships whole. Scientists dismissed them. The ocean doesn't work that way, they said, through thick glasses and the smell of, I don't know, Old Spice.
Yeah. But are they the ones that are out there on the boats? I'm just saying. Anyway, then January 1st, 1995, the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea recorded an 85-foot wave slamming into the structure, captured by instruments. So now that's undeniable. And to science, suddenly rogue waves were real.
And then that's nuts that it took until the 90s, like till Big Bubba was in office to finally admit there was rogue waves and there was an actual reality to that. So tell us, Rogue Kathryn, what is the cause other than a vengeful God?
Well, scientists are still figuring it out. They can admit there's no single mechanism. Neptune hasn't been ruled out. Multiple factors can align to make waves combine and amplify. Waves at different speeds catching up to each other, currents clashing with wave direction, energy focusing into a single point. You get a wave more than twice the height of everything around it, appearing from nowhere, jumping everything in their path like this is the West Side Story, disappearing just as fast.
If you weren't there to see it, you would never know it happened unless you're looking directly at the cliff face where something has apparently reached 110 feet. Muirhead's conclusion was that keepers went down to the West Landing that afternoon to secure the equipment, and they thought there was a break in the storm. Maybe they did see the wave coming. This is like that movie Deep Impact. They're just waiting for it to hit, defenseless. Maybe they heard it. Maybe it hit before they could even react. Either way, I'm sure it was just like a few terrifying seconds before they realized this wave was different. It was mean. It was angry. It was hungry. Or it was just another piece of randomness in this world that apparently has no meaning at all. I don't know. What's your take, Kathryn?
Well, it isn't named Rogue for nothing. There isn't a rhyme or reason for it. It just appeared and it just took them. His report reads, I am of the opinion that the most likely explanation is that they had all gone down on the afternoon of Saturday, 15 December, and a large body of water coming down upon them had swept them away with resistless force.
Which is terrifying. Resistless force. I like that term, but it's terrifying. When you have something so strong, not one being on this planet could fight it unless you're Captain America.
So here's the scenario. Ducat and Marshall went to secure the equipment, wearing oilskins. MacArthur, seeing them in trouble or hearing a wave, rushed out to help without grabbing his coat. All three are swept into the sea. No bodies ever found. The North Atlantic, it doesn't give back what it takes.
The official explanation is just rogue wave, nature being this brutal and indifferent beast, but I don't think we can talk about this case without really getting into the darker possibilities, the ones that don't have neat scientific explanations. We are Mugshot Mysteries, so we would be remiss not to take it a bit further here.
Agreed. So let's go there.
Let's start with psychological. We talked about isolation, talked about mercury poisoning, we talked about cabin fever, but I want to dig deeper into what that actually looks like when it all goes wrong. Because when it does in situations like this, oh boy, does it.
So there's research from Antarctic stations, crews wintering over in complete isolation. More than 60% report depression or anxiety, and nearly half experience memory problems, sleep disturbances, irritability that escalates into something worse. There's a phenomenon researchers call small group dynamics, where in confined spaces, minor personality conflicts become unbearable, obsessive, dangerous.
And we know MacArthur specifically had a reputation for volatility, for settling things with his fists before his words. I'm quite sure he was told something to that effect during his life. MacArthur, use your words. I know you're feeling big emotions. I probably didn't say that back in the day.
No, big emotions it's a new thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's one theory. Something snapped. Maybe an argument that had been building for days. Maybe MacArthur, maybe one of the others, a confrontation near the cliffs, violence. And then whoever was left, realizing what they'd done, making a choice about whether they could live with it.
Murder-suicide, which is dark, but there is no physical evidence in the lighthouse. No blood, no signs of struggle. Is this a nothing burger, Kathryn?
Well, unless it all happened outside on those cliffs where the sea would wash away any trace.
Which I love. Well, I mean, I don't like murder-suicide, but I like the theory. But there is another psychological angle that we can take here. What if it wasn't violence? What if it was something stranger?
Ooh, go on. Do tell.
Shared delusions.
Okay.
Folie à deux, or in this case, folie à trois.
He's so proud of himself, guys.
I didn't say any of that right. It's documented in psychological literature. In situations of extreme isolation and stress, one person's break from reality can spread to others. They start all seeing the same thing. They believe the same impossible things. They're acting on them together. It's this one unit. It's cohesive. All of it's feeding into each other's crazy. First, they're seeing things. Next, they're sitting down and talking to anybody that will listen about Ron Hubbard and how NASA is lying a bunch about spheres and round things.
You mean flat earthers?
I mean flat earthers, yes.
Yes, we will not cover that, for we do not think it is mysterious. So, the thing with the shared delirium, and if those log entries were real, the ones, about the men weeping, praying, going quiet, that could describe the onset of something like that. 3 men trapped by storms, slowly losing their grip on what's real.
And then one night, they all walk out together. They walk into the sea because something has convinced them that they needed to. Sirens. Beautiful coconut bras, flipper having sirens at the sea.
Wow. Okay. Now let's just talk about what the locals believed, not what Gabriel believed, because we keep dancing around it. But the people who actually lived near these islands, who knew them for generations, they had a very specific explanation.
The Phantom of the Seven Hunters. Coming soon to the Nintendo 64.
Okay. Well, for centuries before the lighthouse was built, people believe these islands were guarded by something. Some accounts call it a spirit. Others describe it more like a presence, something that didn't want humans there and had ways of making that known. The name Seven Hunters itself is ominous because they're hunters of what or who?
And then there's rituals. You remember? Removing your hat. Turning clockwise 3 times. We would have to explain to Kathryn. Those weren't just superstitions to the locals. Those were protection. That was appeasement. it's also super duper OCD, but you were asking permission to be there. You were subserving.
When the lighthouse was built, there was local opposition. Not just practical concerns, genuine fear that putting a permanent structure on Island Moor, manning it with outsiders who didn't know the old ways, was just inviting disaster.
And then barely a year after the light was lit, 3 men vanished without a trace. You can see why the locals felt vindicated, why they said that the men had been spirited into the other world. This is a little bit of that Schadenfreude. People love being right. It validates them. It makes them feel superior. The most important 3 words I can tell you, Kathryn, guess what? They aren't I love you. You know what they are. You were right.
Ooh, you know what? You are right. See what you did there? So there's a detail that gets reported in some accounts, though it's not in Moore's official report, so take it with a grain of salt. When Moore first stepped onto the island, 3 large black birds took flight from the rocks and disappeared out over the sea.
So we got 3 men, 3 birds. Some would say that they were Three's Company.
Three's Company too. Come and knock on my door. See, I have to sing. It's just, I can't.
That was 1. You get 1.
I'll stop there. In Celtic folklore, birds are often associated with the soul's journey to the afterlife. Ravens especially are seen as guides between the worlds. So if that detail is true, or even if it was added later because it felt true, it speaks to how people understood what happened there.
It's not an accident. It's a taking.
Right. So the lighthouse was manned for another 70 years after the disappearance, until it was automated in 1971. Keepers lived and worked on the island, and reports from those decades are, you can imagine, unsettling.
Well, let's go over them.
Okay, so keepers are describing feelings of being watched, even when alone. Sounds that couldn't be explained by wind or waves. Voices sometimes. Footsteps on the stairs when everyone was accounted for. And more than one keeper reported hearing names being called out in the wind.
Let me take a guess. The names of the dead men, obviously.
Ducat, Marshall, MacArthur, as if the island was calling for them, or as if they never really left.
Okay, can you give me an example of how it have sounded? Ducat, Marshall, MacArthur. Something like that?
Thank you for doing it for me.
It would. Okay, I don't know how it sound. I'm just trying to imagine. It would be genuinely terrifying,
For
though.
sure.
It seems a little far-fetched to me because when the wind talks to me, it's usually just berating me for not wearing a sweater, flip-flops.
Yeah, it's definitely the California vibe. There's also the question of the chapel. St. Flannan Chapel, built in the 7th century, still stands on the island, or what's left of it. The keepers called it the kennel because of its small size, but it was considered sacred ground for over 1,000 years. A place where the boundary between this world and whatever comes next was thinner.
And guess what? You build a lighthouse right next to it. You bring in men who maybe don't respect the old traditions, who don't turn sunwise or remove their hats, and they're wearing shoes in the house and they're tracking dirt everywhere, who treat it just like another job.
And if you believe in that sort of thing, and the locals absolutely did, you're not just building a lighthouse. You're committing a kind of trespass, trespasses that have consequences.
I want to raise one more possibility. And this one may be the most disturbing because it doesn't have any explanation at all.
All right, go for it.
What if we're not supposed to know what happened? What if some things just happen in certain places? There's no framework, scientific or supernatural, that can really contain them. It's just chaos. It has no meaning. It has no earthly explanation. The Flannan Isles had a reputation for centuries before anyone even tried to explain them. Maybe the explanation isn't waves or phantoms or madness. Maybe it's just that place, that specific rock in the ocean where all the rules are different. Reality is thin, evil prevails, and damn it, the British just had to settle it.
They do have a tendency to do that. Anyway, it's
flag.
Do you have a flag? No flag, no country, and those are the rules that I've just made up. And if you don't know Eddie Izzard, I don't like you.
There might be a lot of people that you don't like, though.
That tracks in general. Anyway, that theory is almost scarier than any specific theory.
Well, because you can prepare for a wave. You can try to guard against madness and isolation, probably with a good magazine or the internet. But you can't prepare for a place that just takes people for reasons that aren't in the human understanding.
Okay, so after all that, what do we actually believe happened on Flannan Isle?
Part of me wants to believe that rogue wave explanation because it's just really clean. It's nature being brutal and random. The sea is angry, or I mean, maybe it's not. It's just the sea. It just is. It doesn't require anything supernatural or sinister. That's the most logical thing. But logical isn't always right.
And
It doesn't feel complete to me.
boom.
You got 3 experienced keepers. They're all taken at once. No bodies are ever recovered on an island with centuries of darkness. The wave explains the how, but maybe it doesn't explain the why. Why there? Why them? Why did locals see it coming in a way that Big Lighthouse did not?
Well, here's where I land. I think something happened on the island that we don't have the right words for. And so maybe it was a wave, but a wave that came at exactly the wrong moment in exactly the wrong way, almost like it was aimed. Maybe it was madness, but madness that descended on all 3 men simultaneously, driving them out into the dark together.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was something older, something that lived on those rocks before St. Flannan built his chapel, before the shepherds brought their sheep, before anyone gave that island a name. Something very, very old. Something that tolerated visitors only as long as they followed the rules and they left before night came. But when these rules are broken...
And then the lighthouse came. Men who stayed not just overnight, but for weeks. A light that burned every night, pushing back the darkness that owned that place for millennia.
That phrase, the other country, that's what the locals called it. Not a dangerous place or a haunted place, another country. Like it belonged to something else that wasn't human. Humans were only ever guests. That it could have been a bridge to somewhere else entirely.
And that those guests just simply overstayed their welcome.
The lighthouse still stands, you know. It's automated, like you said, and funny enough, or thankfully enough, there's been no keeper since 1971. Just the light blinking away in the darkness, warning ships to stay clear. Don't come here. There's no need. Here's a light to show you out.
I wouldn't want to be the maintenance crew on it, though. And the locals still don't spend the night there, even now. Even with all our modern explanations and scientific frameworks, the fishermen who pass by, the occasional researcher or tourist, they come during the day and they most definitely leave before the dark.
And what's interesting is some of this knowledge, it doesn't come from books or studies. It comes from all these generations of these people learning the hard way what places they need to respect and what boundaries they need not cross. The island had made non-negotiables that were not followed. And there's repercussions for non-negotiables.
Ducat, Marshall, and MacArthur crossed a boundary, maybe physical, walking down to that landing at the wrong moment, and maybe something else. But either way, they went somewhere they couldn't come back from.
And we don't know if they went willingly. We don't know if they were taken. We don't know if they saw it coming or if it was just instantaneous. We don't know their last words or their last thoughts. We know nothing except that they were there and then they weren't.
God is over all. If those really were the last words written in that lighthouse, and we'll never know for sure, what did they mean? A prayer? A surrender? A warning?
Or just an acknowledgement that out there on that rock, something else was in charge. And it always had been.
The death registers list their cause of death as probably drowning. Probably. After 124 years, that's the best we can do. 3 men reduced to a single word of uncertainty. And maybe that's the final cruelty of whatever happened on Flannan Isle. Not just that it took 3 men, but that it left nothing behind. There were no answers. There's no closure. Just questions that will echo as long as that lighthouse keeps blinking.
The Phantom of the 7 Hunters. Still out there, still waiting. If you believe in that sort of thing. I do. And that uncertainty is why this story endures. We want there to be more. We want something that makes sense of three experienced men just vanishing without a trace. We want to make connections so we can move on with our day. It's called cognitive closure. We rather have a definitive answer than those questions.
And after researching this case, I'm not sure I don't believe in that sort of thing too. When the wind sings of the men lost and ravens fly in the trees, the light that was lit shall fall in the sea.
Hey now, that was pretty poetic.
Well, that's our show for tonight, folks. The Flannan Isles mystery. 3 lighthouse keepers who vanished on a rock in the North Atlantic, leaving behind stop clocks and unanswered questions. Check out our Instagram and TikTok at Mugshot Mysteries Podcast for images of the lighthouse, the islands, and some historical documents that will just kind of give you some chills.
Tell your friends about 3 men who walked into the dark and never came back. And hey, pleasant dreams, everyone.
Wow. How about this? Until next time, stay curious, stay safe.
And maybe stay away from secluded, deserted islands.
Especially the ones that locals won't even spend the night on. There's usually a reason. But as always, Gabriel, what have we learned today?
We have learned that Poseidon may smite you at any time. That dead man can wave, apparently.
Wow.
That putting mortal enemies in isolation, it may result in one of them mysteriously dying. That anytime locals say something is cursed, you might as well find another vacation spot. And also, girls, don't do those braids. And finally, if I could express one desire at this junction of my life, I would only ask you this question. You're fond of me lobster, ain't you?
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Breadcrumbs through the haze. Every clue's a piece in this crazy